Join me on a photo walk of a beautiful conservatory with a dinosaur event going on. It's all indoors, and I was curious about this event. For the equipment, I was using the Sony A7s camera. This is a very video-focused camera, but it's pretty good for photos, which we'll get to in detail. The lens I was using was a Sony FE 24-70 f4 lens, so it has that fixed maximum aperture through the zoom range. That's a nice lens for photo and video. I did set up two custom modes on the camera. One was aperture priority, so I could adjust the aperture as needed, but I was also using a flexi spot mode for focusing. I could change the box and move it around. That way I could focus exactly where I wanted to in that mode. For the second mode, I was using standard program mode, letting the camera decide where to focus, pretty much everything. As I was doing the photography, I was switching between those two modes as needed. Sometimes the camera wouldn't focus where I wanted, so I just switched back to the aperture priority mode, and then I was able to focus exactly where I wanted. Focusing on this camera can be a little bit quirky. It does not have a touchscreen, which tends to be the way that I do it these days for my videos. That's super quick to use a touchscreen, but in this case, I set up a custom button for the function menu area where you press the FN button. It's a quick list of stuff. I have drive mode, steady shot, so if I wanted to disable the lens's stabilization, I could. Then there's focus mode, focus area, exposure compensation, ISO, metering, white balance. I changed up the custom key settings. This is where I adjusted the camera so it's more photography focused. Custom button 1 was ISO. Custom button 2 was monitor brightness. This camera definitely needs a sunny weather mode quite often. Custom button 3 I set to memory in case I wanted to get to the other memory settings. It has two built-in ones, but then it has additional ones that I think are based on whatever memory card you have in there. You can push those additional groups of settings into there. I didn't use those, but that's a cool feature. I disabled all the directional pad items so I don't accidentally press those when I'm doing photography. The main setting I changed is the AEL button, and I set that to focus settings. That specific focus settings option is for adjusting where you want the focus box to be. And when I was in the aperture priority mode that I set up, that was something I was using a lot. That AEL AF MF switch is in combination with a button inside of it. I have to be on the bottom of that switch, and then I could press that button to get into that focus settings area. On the top dial, you have a 1 and 2 for the memory modes. I was using that a lot to switch between the two. Very convenient, very quick, and then as I needed to focus where I wanted, or I wanted to specifically adjust the aperture, I was able to do that pretty fast. In the mode that I did have the ability to adjust the focus point, I was using the two dials in combination. One dial moves it up and down, the other dial moves it left and right. It's decently convenient. I mean, it's not as fast as a touchscreen, but it works. My one gripe with this camera is the front dial is kind of sharp and small, so it's a little difficult to adjust, but other than that, not too bad. And you can use the back D-pad setup to move that focus box as well if you want to do that. It's just not as convenient as the dials. Having the dedicated EV compensation dial on the camera is pretty nice, especially when I was in program mode. Super simple to adjust things a little bit as needed, but obviously you need to keep in mind what it's set at. You have to basically reset it every time or just check on it so you didn't accidentally change it. I wish there was a lock on that as well as the main dial, but this camera doesn't have that. Overall, it's not a bad camera for photography. Considering the resolution of the camera, I think it's fine. I'm not doing any prints, I'm just doing online posting of photos. So at least for me, that 12 megapixels or so is pretty decent. This lens does have quite a bit of distortion. I could see it in the program AC/DC as I was cycling through the RAWs. It would adjust from the built-in screenshot or whatever it is in the photo, which is adjusted by the camera for distortion, and then it switches to the RAW, and then I can see the actual distortion in there. Pretty interesting to look at, but it's not terrible. It's functional. Looking at the photos, it's the summer around here, and considering this is a conservatory with a lot of plants and such, it's pretty warm inside, but not too bad. At least I didn't have rain on me. But they had a very cool exhibit going on with all of these dinosaurs. They had a bunch of information on the cards around the conservatory. So I was taking photos of that as well as the actual displays. I'm not going to try to pronounce some of these names, but you'll see them on screen as I go through them. They had a bunch of very interesting information on the cards, and even at 12 megapixels, I was able to read those after the fact in my photos, plus a bunch of flowers and such, which is always great for photography. Pretty simple, pretty fun, colorful. I love taking photos of flowers. Looking at the creatures, they seem to be a mix of natural materials with some type of shellac or something on them. I think I had the most fun using this zoom lens to try to get photos where I could exclude a bunch of the background and try to make it feel like more of a natural situation. Considering all of the plants that worked pretty well with their displays, I was trying to make it like it was in real life. You know, if I had tried to take photos of this actual real living creature as best as I could. 70 millimeters on full frame isn't super narrow in focal length, so I wasn't able to get too much in that respect. I think a 200 millimeter would have been really, really interesting, but 70 at least gave me the ability to try to do that with the photos. As you walk through the conservatory, you see more and more that they hid around there basically. And oh, I just missed this dinosaur, I just missed this one. And it was fun trying to find all of them, basically kind of like Pokemon, but in this case, a really cool mix of real life creatures, at least at some point in history. Of course, I tried to get wide angle photos of the conservatory as well, capture a broader view of it, and allow viewers to get a better idea of how it is in general. This kaleidoscope has been here as long as the conservatory has existed. I've taken a photo like this before through the kaleidoscope, try the zoom lens out and see what I could do with it, but they did change it up with dinosaurs in there. I have been slacking on using filters. One of my viewers had mentioned it in a previous video about doing product photography, which was totally true. I should be using circular polarizers more to deal with reflections. I didn't do it this time either. If you're into photography and you want to try to deal with reflections on water or basically any reflective surface, that's a good thing to keep in mind and consider using those filters. Sadly, I didn't do it at this one, so it's a little challenging to find the right angles and positions to capture the koi fish, but I was able to get some of the photos looking decent. The koi here were very friendly. They would come up to you and basically hang out as you're close to the water. So that was very easy for photography. In addition to the dinosaurs, they had a bunch of plants related to the exhibit as well. 100, 200, 300 million years ago, some of these plants were around. So that's super cool to see. So I'm glad that I took photos of that. This is a really fun exhibit at this conservatory. I really enjoyed taking photos of those dinosaurs. If you enjoyed the video, Scout Trophy Bonsai, thanks.